Lynn, thank you very much for the lovely introduction and also the opportunity to reconnect with CSU. At the onset, I do want to acknowledge an outstanding pioneer of open, Charles Sturt University. You are one of the founding partners of the OERu International Innovation Partnership. And in fact, you recently hosted the 7th international meeting of OERu partners at your beautiful Port Macquarie campus. So it's just lovely to be able to reconnect with you again. So what I thought I would do today is just give a very brief overview, a couple of slides. Interestingly, I'm actually not using any slideshow software here. This is actually an HTML-based presentation. I'm using a piece of technology called Reveal.js, which is an open source application to generate slides which are HTML-based. So I thought I'd just give a quick overview and then possibly just stop there, and then we can guide the discussion based on the questions. I thought it might be interesting to actually look at live artifacts, so to speak, of what's happening in OERu based on the questions we get from the group. So let's hope all the technology works, and moving on. I mean, the core challenge that we are trying to solve at the OERu is essentially widening access to higher education. We know that conservatively estimated over the next 25 years, there will be at least 100 million learners who are qualified for seats in tertiary education, who through lack of funding or places in their own countries will not have the privilege of a tertiary education. And what we are doing at the OERu is really to see to what extent we can use open processes and open systems to at least help address some of this challenge. I mean, imagine, for example, if institutions around the world, higher education institutions, just assemble 2 courses based entirely on open access resources, open educational resources, and agreed to provide assessment services for those courses. In short, this is what we're doing at the OERu. We assemble courses based entirely on OER, but I do want to emphasize that we are first and foremost a philanthropic organization. Unlike others that are operating in the space, we are not a commercial entity. We are committed to widening access from a charitable perspective. But of course, our partner institutions will be able to generate revenue streams to sustain the costs of the assessment services that they provide through the network. But as I said, we assemble courses based entirely from open educational resources. They are designed for independent self-study. And our partner institutions in the network opt in to provide assessment services on a fee-for-service cost recovery basis for these courses, which are mapped to formal academic credit towards credible credentials. So what I thought I would do is I'll quickly play the student video which summarizes the concept. And technology willingness is going to work. There's an interesting challenge with the Linux client for Zoom around audio. So I'm just going to disconnect my headset for a moment and we'll see if this works.
OERu provides world-class education to everyone, no matter where they live or their background. OERu provides free online courses and affordable ways to gain academic credits towards qualifications from recognized institutions. Are you new to higher education or just interested in learning more about a topic? Study online for free from anywhere in the world. Choose from a range of high-quality complete courses and only pay for assessment if and when you're ready for it. OERu courses are designed with you in mind, with flexible ways to study. All our courses are taught online for web and mobile delivery. Content is based on free open source resources, which means you won't need to buy textbooks. Subjects are designed for independent study, and you get peer support from the OERu learning community. Find an OERu course that interests you. Get open access to online resources with no obligation or course fees. Study independently or learn with your peers. Only pay an assessment fee if you're ready for it. Submit your assignments for the opportunity to gain credits from the OERu partner organisation. If you're working towards a formal qualification, then OERu courses can help you get there. Visit oeru.org today.
So, and that's just a high-level summary. I think it, explains rather well how the OERu operates. Where we're at the moment, we are in the processes of launching a first year of study at the OERu. We have got 2 exit qualifications on the table. One, which is a Certificate of Higher Education Business that will be conferred by the University of the Highlands and Islands, with a number of business-related courses and a number of partners in the network that will be assessing those courses. And we already have the signed articulation and credit transfer agreements in place for the credit transfer from the assessing institution to the conferring institution, which is the University of the Highlands and Islands. The second qualification that we have on the books is a Certificate of General Studies, which will be conferred by Thompson Rivers University in Canada. Of course, any institution in the network would be able to confer their own qualifications, but one of the things that we need to have in place in order to ensure that our learners do get exit awards are the articulation agreements, which is in fact one of the benefits of membership is the negotiation that we support in achieving those articulation agreements. Another exciting development in the OERu is the implementation of micro-credentials. So back in the early day, one of the challenges that we needed to address were the differences in course size in different parts of the world. I mean, so for example, a standard course in Australia is 160 notional learning hours, whereas in New Zealand it's 150 notional learning hours. In North America, the average course size is 120 notional learning hours. In the UK, modules are typically 200 learning hours. So one of the things that we needed to do was to figure out how we're going to deal with these differences in course sizes. And our solution was to assemble all OERu courses as individual micro courses, equating roughly to 40 notional learning hours. So now we've got a standard course size transfer currency, if you will. 3 micro courses equals a full course in the USA. 4 micro courses equals a full course in Australia and New Zealand, and 5 micro courses, typically a full module in the UK. Assembling all our courses as micro courses has given us the ability now to actually implement micro credentials. And by way of example, one of our courses, Introduction to Project Management, is assembled or consists of 4 micro courses. They listed there. And we offer assessment services for each of those micro courses. And if learners successfully pass each one of those micro courses, we are now in a position to issue transcript credit towards the Certificate of Higher Education in the UK. So we are creating flexibility of options by providing learners the ability to achieve stackable micro-credentials, which are in fact mapped to formal academic credit for those learners who want them. A little bit about open pedagogy. I mean, this is still, in many respects, a contested concept in sort of the open education space, but I do think it's worthwhile having a think about the things that we can do with open that you can't do with closed. And one of those things, of course, is this whole notion of free-range learning, or what Jim Taylor has called the pedagogy of discovery. If you think about it, it is now possible with the growing inventory of OER and open access resources, learners can go and search and find open access resources in pursuit of their own interests in achieving the learning outcomes. And so one of the things that we try to do in our OERu courses is to implement this pedagogy of discovery, where learners actually go out and find resources in support of their own interests in achieving the learning outcomes of our courses. The other aspect, which I think is also quite interesting, is this whole notion of learning on the open web. At the OERu, one of the things that we've done is, our focus is really about learning on the internet, as opposed to learning via a single application like a learning management system. And so our whole system is designed to facilitate learning on the internet, using a range of technologies that learners have control over, and that learners have control over the artifacts of learning that they are producing. So a quick overview of our technology platform. We author all our courses using wiki technology. We in fact use the same software that Wikipedia uses, MediaWiki, for authoring all our courses. When assembling a course, we just basically construct an outline of the course structure. And we have a script, an automated script. It's all open source, that you press a button, which will automatically publish that collection of wiki pages to a WordPress site. In conjunction with the published WordPress site, we use a distributed range of best-of-breed open source technologies to support their interactions. And we have technologies that aggregate or bring together all the interactions that are taking place on the web through a single course feed, a syndicated course feed. Just to elaborate a little on this, we have actually assembled an open source component-based next generation digital learning environment. We have our own social media platform. We use Mastodon as opposed to the proprietary Twitter service. Learners maintain their own blogs instead of e-portfolios for producing their learning outputs. We have an internal commenting engine that learners can post comments. We also make extensive use of Hypothesis, which is an amazing piece of open source technology which gives learners the ability to annotate any web page or PDF document that is available on the open web. Linking up with our pedagogy of discovery, we use a tool called Semantic Scuttle, which enables learners to share links to resources they have found interesting in pursuit of their own learning outcomes with the learning group. And we use the Discourse open source discussion forum engine for our discussions. So I think what I'll do there is just leave this here for a moment and answer any questions that you may have that relating to OERu before we actually go and take a look at some of the technologies. So let me just stop the screen share for a moment. And yeah, if there are any questions from our folk, it's a small, intimate group, which is great. It means we can have a meaningful conversation.
It is. Okay, so opening up to the group. Any questions, Julie? You'd like to ask a question?
Sure. Hi, Wayne. I'm just wondering, so the wiki platform that you use, do you find is this fluent for creation of the courses and modules? Have you had any issues with it, or is it perhaps a little bit of a barrier, not quite as WYSIWYG as other platforms?
Julie, it's an excellent question, and Wiki Educator is now 12 years old, so we have lots of experience in this. Initially, it's not immediately obvious. Most faculty, by and large, do not have the basic skills of semantic markup and using semantic markup. It's not hard to learn at all, but there is an initial step that academics need to take, or course developers need to take, in order to unleash the power of these technologies. It's an interesting challenge. Way back, would have been about at least 10 years ago, we were supported by a New Zealand Ministry of Education initiative to foster and support the development of OER within the school sector across New Zealand. And one of the requirements that they had was you have to implement a WYSIWYG editor in order to address these challenges, and which we did. There is, in fact, a reasonably good WYSIWYG editor for the MediaWiki software. Mm-hmm. And based on our experiences and data from that initiative, we found no significant difference in editing behavior before WYSIWYG editing was implemented, which is very, very interesting, which it suggests that working in these open environments is more of a cultural change than a technological barrier. It's one of these things, you know, if we as educators, I think, are wanting to become proficient in sort of next generation learning online, we need to acquire the skills to use the basic tools in order to do this. It's kind of like, you know, you can't learn to ride a bicycle without actually riding a bike. You can't learn to swim without getting your feet wet. And those are skills that aren't initially easy to learn, but they're important life skills. And similarly, I think one of the things we need to do as academics working in the space is help each other, you know, acquire these skills in working in these open online, you know, environments here.
Mm-hmm.
I have a question relating to that. So just on that, what percentage of people then are using your editor are actual academics from faculty, or are they more people who have a little bit more experience in using different markup languages?
So good question. It's all of the above.
Right.
So what we tend to do, just given the nature of the work that we're doing, you know, I accept and understand that most academics and folk working in higher education don't wake up in the morning thinking, what am I going to do for open today? I mean, realistically, we've got challenging jobs. We've got lots of things that we need to be doing. And so what we've tended to do, particularly in these early phases of the OERu collaboration, is actually work with the champions. You know, so we're working with the people that have a strong disposition to actually wanting to do something with open. And we have the full range from people who are just starting out in learning wiki markup to folk that do have advanced skills. But I mean, one of the advantages of a wiki environment, and in fact is one of the reasons we use it, is for the version control. So you'd appreciate it. I mean, when we are collaborating, you know, a couple of countries developing a course or assembling a course, a version control is mission critical. I mean, using a learning management system, for example, I mean, if you were to give me access to your LMS and say, hey, Wayne, we're going to collaborate together, and I go in and I start making changes, you're actually not going to know what changes I've made. So the whole version control piece is very important to us. But it also gives us the added advantage that somebody who doesn't quite have the skill set yet in, you know, the various forms of wiki markup, because we can actually share the same page. You know, by having a little video conference like this, it's quick and easy to show somebody how to do this, because you can't break a wiki. There's absolutely nothing you can do to break a wiki. The worst thing that can happen, it's a mistake that usually only happens once in one's lifetime. The worst thing that can happen is forgetting to click the save button after authoring for 3 hours. But as I said, you only do that once in your life. But as long as you've clicked the save button, you can't break anything. So if somebody's messed up the layout or is not sure how to do something, you know, we use a number of, we've got a wonderful open source alternative to Slack. We use Rocket Chat. So, you know, people pop in there, say, hey, I'm struggling on this page. They send the URL. One of us jumps in and, you know, helps and shows and does a little hand holding. Yeah. So, I mean, it's worked for us. But as I say, I mean, we're kind of working with the converted in some respects, and people that are actually wanting to do this. I think it is harder to, you know, do it institution-wide. But again, I mean, the payback of getting these skills is the ability to start actually thinking about teaching and learning in sort of the Web 3.0 world, you know, that we're all going to have to start thinking about here.
Yep, thank you.
I have a question. Wayne, and I may have missed this information before, but
sure,
you know, you have done this collaboration with a lot of institutes around the globe in contributing and also, you know, endorsing the qualification through OERu. Are you doing the same with industry partners?
No, at this stage, we haven't been working with industry, but it's not to say it's an area we are not thinking about. I mean, clearly, I mean, looking at the data that is coming in, and just bear in mind, we've only just launched the first course with OERu earlier this year. And we're slowly rolling out, so there's still a lot of data we need to be collecting and learning from what we are doing. But by far the largest audience that we've attracted to date are mature adults over the age of 25. And the number one reason for enrolling in an OERu course is professional development.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
And so I suspect that we will be seeing ourselves moving a lot closer to providing more opportunities for professional development with industry, with the added advantage of having the linkages with formal academic credits. So I mean, it is definitely an area we are wanting to explore.
That sounds good, because like you said about people trying to do the micro courses for professional development, I think there's room for employers recommending these courses as part of, you know, professional development as a business requirement. That would be fantastic, because that will also increase the number of students trying to do the courses. I think that there's great room for growth in that area. And another question I had was in regards to the number of people that you said by 2025 won't have access to higher education internationally. And we know a lot of the third world countries are still going to have that problem. Is language going to be a barrier? Coming from India, I know a lot of a high number of people speak English, but there are many other countries where they may not be speaking English. So have you considered at some point in future looking at translating into other languages?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, if you look at those 100 million learners, they don't all speak English. I mean, I'm not sure what the percentages would be of just English speakers, but you're absolutely right. Sort of multilingual solutions are going to become very, very important for the future. So what the network has decided at this point in time, and it's not that we wouldn't change our strategy in the future, but in order to keep this project achievable in the short term, we are just focusing on Anglophone countries. I mean, the whole multilingual aspect introduces a layer of complexity, which is really beyond our capacity to be able to address and solve. But I think moving forward, there are possibly two ways in which the challenges of multiple languages can be addressed. In particular, those languages which do not have high numbers of speakers, because that's a huge gap. In OER are the small languages and the lack of OER in small languages. So, I mean, it's a huge challenge globally. But I think there are two ways in which this problem potentially could be solved in the future. One approach is because everything that we do is open source. In other words, all our systems, all our processes, all the lessons we've learned, all the planning, all the records of our meetings have been shared openly and transparently. That other languages could adopt and reuse those systems and processes to build their own equivalents of what OERu is doing, which would be one solution. The other solution is for multiple languages to be collaborating with us to figure out, well, where is the common ground and how does one work through the challenges of translation? Because unfortunately in education, because it's culturally bounded, direct translation actually doesn't work well.
That's true.
There are many challenges. I'm not sure what the solutions are, but I mean, we are open to work with anybody who, you know, wants to grapple with those challenges. We're an open organization. Yeah.
Perfect. That sounds really good. Thanks.
So just building on from that then, Wayne, I was just thinking, because I have done quite a bit of work with a professional association. It's an international association, and even just getting our manifestos or other things translated, we're always looking at our members who are fluent in those languages to then actually translate those so that they become workable documents for different countries.
Yeah.
And, well, and UNESCO and other international associations are often trying to populate their websites with as many translations across languages as they can. So I'm just thinking, in terms of your model, in terms of partnering, for example, say there was, some kind of foundation in India and they decided to be partnering with you and they wanted to create, I don't want to use the term mirror because it's more than mirror, because a translation has to be, has to be revised to make it the right fit, as what you said, culturally as well as linguistically. But I'm just sort of interested in your thoughts about that as a way of scaling multilingually.
Oh, absolutely. We would welcome those conversations, those kinds of conversations and those kinds of collaborations. I mean, in part, one of my sort of nighttime jobs is I'm also UNESCO chair in OER, and so we do have the UNESCO OER chair network, which covers multiple languages, and that might well be an avenue to explore and see development in this space. But we are certainly, as the OER Foundation, which is the sort of umbrella legal entity that oversees all these operations, would definitely welcome those conversations with open arms. Our mission is to find ways of using open source approaches for more sustainable education futures, and really to try and figure out how do we stop reinventing wheels, albeit different languages might invent around the wheels. But I do think there are areas where meaningful collaboration can help shorten the learning curve and achieve greater efficiencies. So absolutely, we are always open to those conversations, and and learning from the experiences of others in terms of how to solve these problems. Yeah.
Another question I have then is you gave us the example of like the courses that would be then to do with introduction to project management. Then there was your arts example. Are there any other courses on the horizon, or are you starting discussions with other universities that is sort of targeting a particular discipline or area or profession that they wish to be developing open courses for?
Sure. So where the network is at the moment in terms of the decisions and the priorities we've established for at least 2019 is we are focusing on the implementation of the first year of study. So at this point in time, our emphasis is not so much on building the second and the third year and other qualifications, but rather to streamline and get our first year right before we start taking steps into the future. But that's just the immediate short term. The conversations that are taking place within the network around future development will be, for example, a second year in general studies. Just given the nature of a Bachelor of General Studies, there is a wider range of courses which one is able to bring into the curriculum, as opposed to very focused discipline-based or professional-oriented qualifications. So, I suspect that we will see development in that area. The other interesting piece in this equation is if in North America and in Canada at least, you don't find that the universities there make a huge distinction between first and second year level. So first and second year level of study is actually interchangeable. So we are actually quite close in terms of North American exit qualifications, a lot closer to, say, having a diploma or an associate's degree in arts, general studies, and then we would be able to achieve here locally, say in Australia and New Zealand, just given the differences in terms of how our curricula are structured. So that is certainly an avenue which I suspect would be explored deeper into the future. The other one that was discussed here at the most recent meeting, or the other area, is in fact how the OERu, given our international standing, could actually start prioritizing micro courses that are actually mapped to the Sustainable Development Goals. And in fact, UTAS in Tasmania are really leading, the charge in this area. And we actually do already have, UTAS did a mapping of, we already have 10 courses within our suite that are actually closely mapped to the SDGs. So I suspect that would be another productive area of course development as as we move forward. But again, this is, I think one of the things that has characterized the OERu collaboration is the rigor of our planning. We have spent tremendous amount of time and effort in the planning of getting this right, and compared to what some of the commercial MOOC providers are doing. And I think that's going to pay off in the long run. But for us, it's critically important that we get this right, because so many learners are going to depend on the success of what we're doing, rather than looking at sort of commercial gain from the system. Yeah.
Great, thank you. Are there any other questions before Wayne is going to move on to just demonstrate this this course? Any other questions about what we've been discussing?
Just one question, because I have looked at the OERu site when the meeting was on here, and I found a couple of courses. What's the procedure for getting another micro course up there? So if you have any suggestions.
In your case, it's pretty easy, because University of Tasmania is a contributing partner to the OERu network. Just start developing it. Have a conversation with us, and we'll help you through that process, and have the internal discussions with CSU. And I'm sure the team at CSU would welcome those contributions. Yeah.
Yeah. In the first instance, I think Val Peachy is the contact for any ideas for courses.
Yep.
Yeah. Or Julie or Leanne White.
Yep.
Great, thanks, Lenny.
Okay.
So Wayne, would you like to just show us your course site there that you were going to just give us a bit of a demo of?
Sure. I'll give you a bit of an insight into what an OERu course looks like. So that screen share should be coming through. I'm going to just shut down that window.
Yes.
The screen share is coming through for you?
Yep, perfect. Thank you.
Okay, so what you're looking at there is the course website for digital literacies for online learning, which is the first micro course in the OERu's Learning in a Digital Age. So effectively what this is just a WordPress site that is using the OERu theme installed on WordPress. It's available as open source, can be installed on any WordPress. And it speaks to our script. So it's simple as just pressing a button, produce a snapshot from the collection of wiki pages, and it publishes this course site. I mean, what I just wanted to show you here, just by way of interest, I mean, this is not rocket science, but this is in fact the Charles Sturt University course, the first micro course for Indigenous Australia. And what I wanted to highlight there is, just basically there was a bit of custom theming that went on so that it would be more culturally appropriate given the content. So, those kind of tweaks which are, can be implemented. We could have, color themes that are well aligned with the visual identity of the partner institutions. But what this enables is the ability to run what we call open boundary courses, which we can have a chat about a little bit more in a moment. But essentially what an open boundary course would be is Charles Sturt University could have a branded instance of, let's say, this course, Digital Literacies for Online Learning, which you use to support your own learners or teach locally to your own learners, in parallel with the OERu version of the course, right, which is this one here for OERu learners. And given that our interactions are distributed across the web, those two learner cohorts would be able to interact with each other, which is something we can easily achieve that is harder to do with other systems and models, given the approaches that we're using. So I just wanted to highlight that for a moment. But basically what a course site looks like, we assemble courses from a number of learning pathways. The individual learning pathways consist of a number of sub-pages. They're the learning outcomes or the learning objectives, and learners can then navigate through with the activities that are embedded in the individual pages and so forth and so forth. I mean, there's nothing that radical here. It's pretty much a standard sort of e-learning, sequence that learners work through. Where this starts getting interesting is the aggregated course feed, which is, as I indicated earlier, is actually distributed using a number of different technologies. So if I look at this feed that is coming through here, this is a post that I posted on our Mastodon instance, which is an open source alternative to Twitter. If you scan down here, here's an example of a blog post that was tagged with the course code that was on my personal blog. Here is a comment that has come from the internal commenting engine on the site. These are posts that have come through from our bookmark site, again, Hypothesis. And what you can do is, I don't know if you're familiar with Hypothesis, we can actually go and link through to the actual posts. This is wait for this to load. We're looking like we've got a little bit of web latency. That should load now. So this was an activity in this first course where learners were encouraged to go and explore the differences between the definition of digital skills versus digital literacy. And so I've just linked through from that learner's initial comment. But if you're not familiar with Hypothesis, you'll see on the top right-hand corner of the screen here, there's little icons which are related to Hypothesis. I'm just going to switch off all the annotations just by way of demonstration here. So this is just, an article on the internet that we invited the learners to, comment on or, take a read and let us know what they think. And basically what you do is if you've activated your hypothesis, you just highlight the text that you want to annotate. You click the annotate button. And I must, yes, I am logged in at the moment, and you'll see here I get a text area where learners can type their comments, and as long as they use the course tag Leader 101 in the tag section, if they post this, that comment will be harvested on the course feed. So this gives the ability for learners to actually go and annotate any web page on the web or any PDF document which is accessible through a browser. I mean, this is pretty powerful stuff, to support learning. Of course, there can be, I'm not going to post this publicly now, but, learners can actually have discussions by replying to comments that other learners have made. And all of this interaction will be harvested, via the course feed. So that's pretty interesting in terms of the distributed course feed. Getting back here, this is going to have a look at one of these learning pathways. So this is the learning pathway, find and select open resources. Okay. If I scroll down to the bottom of this page here, you'll see there's a content link. Right at the bottom, there's a content link. If I click on that link, it takes me through to the source page in the wiki that was used to author that page. So we don't do any authoring in WordPress at all. All our authoring is done in Wiki Educator, which is a media wiki software engine. I mean, I've just chosen a page by random. I don't know if they've been there much interaction. So, for example, here you'll see on this particular page, other pages, there's been a lot more conversation and editing happening. But if I click here, let's compare those revisions, I can actually see what that individual edit was. So Jim Taylor came in from Australia and made a couple of language edits to improve, the communication. So just by way of example of how this, version control actually works. And you'll see this page actually links through to what we call an outline page in the wiki, which is in effect the structure of the published website. So what you'll see here on the wiki is that's the homepage, Digital Literacies for Online Learning. There's a startup section, there's a course guide section, there are interactions, there are learning pathways. The first learning pathways establish a learning environment. So this is just a structured bullet list, which in fact mirrors the top tier, mirrors the navigation of the published website. So basically this is how this works. In order to publish a course site, all that happens is the user who's got access credentials here, so all our OERu partners have access to this technology being, by virtue of being a partner. People just request, enter your username and your password credentials, and then the script in the background will go ahead and actually publish that course site on the background. And that course site can point to any WordPress instance. So not only the WordPress instance that we are hosting on behalf of our partner network, it could be a WordPress site that you are hosting locally at CSU as well. So, I mean, that's pretty powerful when thinking about these open boundary courses. The other piece, which I think is pretty interesting around what we're doing, is planning for scalability for the OER. I mean, this is a big challenge. So here's the landing page on the OERu website, Introduction to Project Management, right? You'll see Introduction to Project Management consists of these 4 micro courses. We are very committed to open. No learner should have to register a password in order to gain access to the learning materials. If you hide open courses behind password, they are per definition closed. So for us, it's very important that learners should be able to access course materials without registering a password. And so you can see here, learners can immediately click on the Start Learning button, which will take them straight through to the course materials for the role of the project manager, which is the first micro course, and immediately start learning without registering a password at all. We do require password registration for interacting on the discussion sites. In part, that's for 2 reasons: to manage against spam. Otherwise, we'd have a proliferation of UGG boots being sold through all our communications. But of course, it's also important for attribution purposes, just around copyright, that we are able to attribute the source that is being shared by our learners. But no learner is required to have access, have password access to any of our course materials. However, what we also do provide is the opportunity for learners to say, hey, I actually do want to register for the course because I would like to receive email instructions for that course. And so learners can sign up. It's of course entirely free. And what we use on the back end is marketing automation software. It's all open source to actually automate sending of email instructions based on preferences that learners actually share with us. So if a learner comes and says, hey, I'm interested, they give us their first name, they register, we will then automatically send them an email, say, hey, thanks for joining us, hope you have a nice day. But by the way, if you want to customize your learning a little, please let us know what your preferences are. Are you interested in doing this with the next cohort, with the fixed start date or finish date? Do you want to do this as independent study? Do you want to receive the email notifications? And based on their responses, we will then customize the communication campaign on the back end in terms of what's happening here. And so from a scalability perspective, if you think about it, we are implementing what we are calling a perpetual academic year. And what that means in OERu speak is for each micro course, we will have 4 offerings, 3 cohort-based offerings each year with a fixed and a finished start date where learners can opt in to join any one of the cohort sessions. The 4th offering is an open independent study offering, which learners can join or sign up at any time and work at their own pace. Now, if you do the mental math around this, for a full first year of study for 2 Exeter Wards. That's 240 course offerings a year that an organization that's only got 2 full-time staff must administer. And so we've had to do a lot of thinking around automation and how we scale this up. And the solution we are using, as I indicated, is this technology. It's an open source technology called Mautic, which we are able to build automated campaigns. So by a quick example, this will, you'll get the idea very quickly. I'm actually going into one of these campaigns here. This is the campaign that was used for the first course role of the project manager, the first micro course. But you'll see how this basically works. You'll see any learner that expresses interest in receiving the email communications for IPM 101, we immediately assign a number of tags to them, which helps us internally within the system to automate the communications that are going out, because we know what tags they've been assigned. We can then determine specific behaviors. But you'll see here on Wednesday, the 19th of September, they would have received the orientation email. It looks something like this. To preview the email. Dear participant, welcome to Introduction to Project Management, blah, blah, blah. This is what you need to do. Go and check out the syllabus page. Here are the links to get started. Dum, dum, dum. So all, the support information that the learner needs when they just sign up for the course for the first time, that email is sent out automatically, right? And that should, of course, I'm now going to have a problem shutting this down. There we go. And you'll see, on the 20th of September, they would have then received the email for the instructions for session 1. On the 26th of September, the email for the instructions for session 2, and so forth, and so forth, and so forth. But where this gets interesting is at the point that we know that learners are more or less ready for assessment. They would be, we would be able to introduce the marketing collateral of the partner institution that is offering the assessment services. So if this was CSU's course, we would include the email, hey, CSU, did you know CSU offers assessment services for this? You can get formal transcript credit. And so that's one of the benefits of membership in the partnership. So let me leave it just there. That's just sort of a kind of a very high level overview of the system and the platform. But I think you'll agree that it's a pretty powerful kind of next generation platform, which is entirely open source.